So lately, for some reason, I've been getting a little bit of an increased response to some of my older Steelbook videos. Some of them saying what their favorite Steelbooks are, and then others asking me when I'm going to make an update on the Steelbook collection that I'm kind of cultivating. And that made me ponder, like, let me go back, watch those old videos, and think to myself, how many more Steelbooks did I really, in fact, acquire since the making of those videos? A fucking lot. So here we go, update number 1. Yes, number 1 on the Steelbook collection, because trust me, I have just that many, to the point where it's gotten to the point of being an addiction. So I'm gonna cheat a little bit and try to get through this collection as possible, because trust me, if I went through every single Steelbook one by one, I'll be here all day. So I'm gonna try to get through some of the sets that I have here very early on. By sets, I mean franchises or series of films that either were compacted into one sole Steelbook collection, or each of them have their own Steelbook, but they're part of the same series, so I might as well tackle them head on as each being their own franchise. And to start things off, we're gonna go with the Matrix Trilogy Steelbook. So they came up with one singular Steelbook to hold all 3 original Matrix films. And say what you want about the sequels, that I personally feel like the sequels have their moments, even if they might not be great sequels overall. But of course, this houses the original seminal film. And of course, all of them have been restored in 4K Ultra HD along with a digital copy that you can redeem. My only gripe with this Steelbook is that it doesn't include special features, which is a big no-no for me because I am a filmmaker and I would love to see how these movies get made. And also, it doesn't have the Blu-ray copy of each film, which doesn't really affect me too much because I have, like, practically at this point 2 Blu-ray players. First world problems, but it would be nice for others who want to get a 4K player in the future, or even a 4K TV, and for now they have to settle with a 1080p standard HD TV. They're not going to fully experience that, so a Blu-ray copy would be kind of like nice, or if they want to share with someone who only has a Blu-ray player, that would have been a nice little addition, and they didn't really do that with this collection. So that's probably why you're probably going to see frequent sales of this, and if you do, nab it if you're a huge Matrix fan. Otherwise, if they ever come up with a seminal collection that's going to include the Animatrix and a couple of other things, including special features, you're better off waiting. And then we're going to take a sharp turn from very adult-oriented material to animated films. But in particular, great animated films, and not an easy pushover for some cheesy-ass shit. No, I know my quality. Nothing says quality like OG Pixar, especially with the OG of the franchises, the Toy Story films. And here I have literally all 4 Toy Story films on Steelbook. The only thing that kind of bugs my OCD is that the first 3 Toy Story films were released on Steelbook in this very uniformal kind of artwork for the covers that kind of replicate the concept art that was made for the film, and not so much the actual promo artwork of the films when they were released either in theaters or on video. And so they have this kind of, again, uniformity that feels great and looks great right next to each other. And you also have a little bit of colored codeness going on. You have blue for the original Toy Story, you have orange for Toy Story 2, and then green for Toy Story 3. So the Steelbooks really match with design and color and just overall kind of look. Which is why it bugs me that the Steelbook for Toy Story 4 doesn't exactly look like that. It actually uses promo art, or rather poster art, from the theatrical release of the film, but it's of course different from the original artwork that you see on the 4K and Blu-ray release. So it is nonetheless a Steelbook with some cool artwork on the front and back and on the insides of the books themselves. I just wish it would have matched the style of this, and maybe in the future we will get a version of the Toy Story 4 Steelbook that kind of matches the artwork of this one, especially when we get to the eventual and inevitable Toy Story 5. That's probably when we're going to get it. And what really helps is that I was able to nab all 4 of them with a steal. They had this big ass sale where each Steelbook was about $15, and also getting 3 Steelbooks got you a 4th one for free. So Toy Story 4 came in free. This was a bargain overall, and I knew I had to add it to my collection. How to Train Your Dragon, another one of my favorite recent animated trilogies where each film definitely was up on par, in my opinion, of the quality from the previous one. To be quite honest, I think the original is still my favorite, but the latter 2 that came out were actual sequels. Like, they didn't feel like cash grabs. They didn't feel like entries just to make a quick buck because everybody loved the first one so much. It actually felt like the filmmakers had a story to tell with the latter two, especially the third one. I personally think that the third one is better than the second one because the third one had that hidden message about growing up and letting go of your friends, because eventually those friends are gonna want to do their own thing and you guys are not gonna be able to stick around with each other for long. And that's ultimately the message of the third film, and all four have been transferred over to 4K, Blu-ray, and digital copies, and the steelbooks are just gorgeous. I honestly think that the first one with that original poster there that I really enjoy, and then the third one with that reflective kind of cover showing Hiccup as an adult and then him as a child in the reflection of the water is just perfect. And so I had to own all three of them. They were Best Buy exclusives. And yeah, there's not much more that I can say except that this also holds one of my favorite musical scores in animated films. This next series was more of a blind buy more than anything else, but only because not only were they on sale, but I also just liked the overall look of the steelbooks. Even if the movies I was very indifferent to because prior to owning them, never watched them. And I know, somewhat of a sacrilege considering how badass this guy is. The John Wick series. So this is also another little series I own where my OCD kind of gets set off a little bit because I have an individual steelbook for the first two films, but knowing that there's a third film, it's like, oh, I wish they were together. And technically speaking, yes, I do know that there's a separate steelbook that has all three films over at Best Buy, and these were also Best Buy exclusives. But at the time, this is what it sold for, and plus, if I hadn't separated them the way that they do, I wouldn't have gotten this really cool John Wick Chapter 3 steelbook, because, again, haven't seen this movie. In fact, to this day, I have not seen this movie. I've yet to make time for it, but I could not pass up on a really cool, badass steelbook like that. I honestly, there was something about the artwork that I looked at here in the front cover, and I was like, yep, I kind of have to own that. I'm sorry, it's got to be added to the collection. I just love how it looks. And then, with that came the acquirement of the first two films in a two-film collection using this kind of comic book kind of art style showing John Wick in action. And on top it says John Wick two-film collection. The first two films restored over to 4K with special features on the Blu-ray and digital copies. And then you have John Wick 3 with, of course, the 4K Blu-ray and digital copy. I do wish that the digital copies were not on ultraviolet. Nobody uses that anymore. What are you guys doing? And if you have not seen them and you're a huge action fan, definitely do not pass them up, because this is how you do action right. Especially with the almighty national treasure that is Keanu Reeves. You're breathtaking! And then the last collection of steelbooks here that I have for a series would be the recent James Bond steelbooks. Now, these steelbooks, again, kind of match that whole kind of uniformal form of design and artwork where you just have Daniel Craig there. I personally, though would have wished if they swapped color palettes. I feel like green is better suited for Casino Royale, and then the brown is more suited for Skyfall, in my personal opinion, considering the color palette and the cinematography used inside of these films themselves. But of course, I had to went with what I consider to be the two highlights of Daniel Craig's James Bond's version of James Bond so far, and that is of course Casino Royale, where he made a name for himself, and then Skyfall, what a lot of people consider to be like the Dark Knight of James Bond movies, or at least recent James Bond movies. And they're both great action films and great James Bond films, and seeing them in 4K, I knew I just had to have them. Of course, had to skimp out on the Quantum of Solace and Spectre ones, because even though I enjoyed Spectre, I understood its flaws, and I knew that I didn't necessarily have to add it to the collection. But nevertheless, having these two and rewatching them, hopefully in the near future, will get me stoked for the eventual release of No Time to Die. Alright, so now I'm going to enter a portion of the update video where I'm going to tackle some steelbooks of movies that I just saw at the store, primarily Best Buy, because most of these steelbooks are Best Buy exclusives. And I just saw it and thought to myself, I have to own it. And most of these came from the past couple of years, ranging from 2017 to 2019, where I personally feel like they were just coming out with bangers of steelbooks. Even whether I love the film or I thought the movie was okay, but that steelbook is kind of banging. We're starting off with what I consider to be a perfect balance of the quintessential Spider-Man Homecoming. With this steelbook here, that it's funny. It came out in 2017, but I didn't acquire until last year when there was a spare one left at one of my local stores, and saw it and thought to myself, you know what? I gotta own it. Too bad it came mildly broken. It actually had a crack in the middle of the spine, and after one simple handling, it came apart. And that's where I was very heartbroken, but I knew that these are now kind of hard to come by 2 years later. So put it into its collective plastic case here and never taken it out because I just don't want to risk any more damage to it. But I know that this is a very cool looking steelbook using some conceptual art of Spidey swinging there with Iron Man right behind him. And this is obviously one of my favorite MCU films as of recent. Justice League. This is what could probably be considered the more controversial one out of this update video, because even though I enjoyed Justice League, but I didn't love it, and I didn't need to have a steelbook for it. But there's just something really cool about this cover that has Justice League, you know, on its side here vertically next to the emblems of every single member of the Justice League fam right there on the left, I'm sorry. And I just love this cover. And for the price that it was going for, because not a lot of people were picking this up, so Best Buy decided to cut a whopping like 70% off. I think I got this for like $10, and I'm like, at $10? Yeah, let's throw it on. Fuck it. This was a really cool one that I knew I had to have. A Quiet Place from 2018. Not only did I really enjoy this film, it actually ended up on my top 10 of movies of 2018, but also I really enjoyed the steelbook because not only is it a steelbook, it's actually a steelbook with a cover designed by Mondo. If you guys don't know who Mondo is this art style kind of a company that makes a bunch of great art for either posters or steelbooks or covers or vinyls, and a lot of various nice looking stuff that every collector needs to check out their catalog and scope out exactly what it is that they want, because they need to support that company, because they do great artwork. They do very minimalistic or subtle, very nuanced stuff. And this is no exception, because you have the Quiet Place logo styled kind of after either Stephen King kind of font or whatever. You got the red, but then you also got foreshadowment of the events in the film by just a simple shot of those light bulbs. And you know that when those light bulbs are either shaking or twinkling, some shit's about to go down in the film. And that's what I enjoyed about their usage here in the cover. With the red and the black, my favorite clash, I just knew I had to have it. All right, this next one's gonna hurt a little bit, so brace yourselves. Black Panther. Now, if you guys have watched my past steelbook videos, you know that I actually already have another steelbook where it's like a platinum cover and you have like the painting of Black Panther both on the front and the back, you know, in that very kind of African style. That was the original steelbook that came out with the release of the movie on 4K and Blu-ray. This one came long after, because Best Buy, as part of its exclusive line of steelbooks, just decided to come out with a new one. This was, I think, either early 2019 or mid 2019 where this thing came out. And I saw it and I'm like, that's the OG IMAX poster. And I always had a huge fondness for that poster. So when they made a steelbook out of it, I was like, you know what, let me cop. And now, with recent events and the landmark footprint that Chadwick Boseman left on the series, this is a part of it. Shazam. Got the steelbook here. Very minimalistic, but very simple. One of my favorites of that year, even though it wasn't like in my top 5 necessarily, but still a very fun superhero movie, which is a lot to say coming from DC and Warner Brothers. So this was not only a really good film, but I knew that having a very cool minimalistic cover like that, you can't go wrong by owning it. And I believe it came out the same year. If not, I think, you know, I might be just a little ways off. But again, even though I may not be in love with the movie, I may be head over heels with the steelbook. And frankly, that is the case with Bohemian Rhapsody. Not exactly one of the most polished of Best Picture nominees, let alone film editing winners. But goddamn, look at that steelbook. Look at it. Plated in gold with the immortalized image of Rami Malek as Freddie Mercury. And on the inside, you have artwork of the 4 band members heading towards the stage of Live Aid. I was like, damn, why y'all have to pull out all the stops on the steelbook? Because this is a very fine addition, even if the movie's kind of meh. And I just said that I loved Endgame, so needless to say, it's going in the Steelbook collection. And Best Buy pulled out this little number. I personally think it could have been a little bit better. In fact, I believe I've already covered this on a separate video. I think it was its own video of like Avengers Endgame Steelbook review or unboxing or whatever it was called. And I compared this to the Target edition, which the Target edition was not so much a Steelbook as it was like a little flip book where the discs kind of come out of, and you have some behind the scenes kind of excerpts that you could read up on. And I think that the artwork there, which was the IMAX poster, was a little better than this one. I think some stuff could have been a little better polished up, but overall, nice little design for what is the culmination of 22 films of Marvel storytelling. And now we're coming down to the wire of 2019, where we start to get all these theatrical releases when theaters were open, and they were releasing some banging steelbooks, and I knew I just had to add them. First of all, with what I consider to be a slightly better musical biopic, actually not even slightly, rather better musical biopic than that of Bohemian Rhapsody, Rocketman. And that's when I knew that something was up at the Oscars when this was not up for Best Picture, because Rocketman, in my opinion, is the better film, and I knew that when I saw the steelbook, I had to own it. Taron Egerton nailed it as Elton John, and I just love the flashiness of this steelbook because it just matches the man that the movie's after, Elton John himself, and it's very, very nice. And then I have what I consider to be arguably the most underrated film of 2019, where nobody was putting it in the top 10, but practically me. I don't know about anybody else. I didn't really hear anybody talk about Dr. Sleep, what I think to be a fine example of how you do a sequel to a movie that a lot of people were saying don't do a sequel to, and yet here it is, Dr. Sleep, where Ewan McGregor plays a adult Danny Torrance from the original Shining, and now he has to go finish what was ultimately started in that Overlook Hotel. But along with some more supernaturalness and superheroisms, quote unquote, than the original. So it leans more so towards the thriller side rather than the horror side. And I just love, again, how simplistic the steelbook is, with a melding of the two kind of artworks of Dr. Sleep and The Shining there on the front. And what's even cooler is that not only does this have the 4K and Blu-ray transfers of the film and digital copy, but also includes the director's cut on Blu-ray, which is a 3-hour cut of the film that I have yet to watch. So now I have a reason to revisit the film. Joker, I actually really enjoyed this movie, and it's actually one of those movies that I liked when I first watched it in theaters, but I wasn't over the moon for it until I saw it a second time recently, and I was like, alright, you know what, I'm starting to come around and realize exactly why this was up for all those Oscars, and Joaquin Phoenix definitely deserved his for the titular role. And here we have the steelbook, which arguably I could think of some better artwork for the steelbook, but nevertheless, there it is, with some nice little artwork there on the inside as well and on the back, and definitely had to be added to the collection, especially because I saw how quickly that motherfucker was going to sell out. But then we also have, coming back to the minimalistic style of artworks, 1917, one of my favorites of last year, especially with that one take shot kind of look to the overall film. This was, as it says right here, a staggering piece of film, but also very nerve-wracking, especially when you do watch it in a theater. And considering that they made a steelbook with the 4K release, I knew I just had to have it. Could have done a little bit better than just the simple numbers there, but still, I like how it's embroidered with the title. You can actually look how it's kind of embossed there on the center of the cover. So definitely feels like a legit steelbook. And then lastly, what I am gonna possibly title as one of my favorite steelbooks of last year, because what they did with the concept here is Knives Out, Rian Johnson's latest film that takes this massive ensemble of a cast and throws them into a classic whodunit, and definitely one of the finer films from last year. If you have not seen this movie, definitely check it out. It's a treat. But what's even better is this steelbook, because it has a couple of things. One, you have this art style here at the front, but if you look closely, you notice that it's modeled after one of the novels of the center character that, spoilers, dies, and that's who the murder mystery is centered around. And what's cool is that, again, it models that old school novel kind of look, down to where on the side of the side of the steelbook, right there where it opens up, you can kind of see a mock-up of pages to make it look like a book. But then you also have the cast listed here like a book spine, and then on the back you also have that kind of old school 80s novel kind of aesthetic. And I don't want to ruin it, but let's just say that there's a hidden little Easter egg with this steelbook, that has to do with not just the steelbook, but also the sleeve, the plastic sleeve, translucent plastic sleeve that it comes wrapped in. Just keep toying with it, and eventually you'll figure it out. And now we're coming down to the wire of this particular update video for my Steelbook collection, because unless you've been living under a rock, you would know that, of course, the coronavirus pandemic hit, shutting down movie theaters and therefore shutting down brand new Steelbooks of those movies that would have been released in theaters. So Best Buy, amongst other retailers, but mainly and notably Best Buy, took it upon themselves, along with the Steelbook company, the Steelbook themselves, to make steelbooks on classic films of years past to give them an extra oomph in the home video market. And so here I have at least a nice, decent little collection of much older films, and they range from movies that came out around 2008, 2009, so only about a decade ago, to even 20, 30, 40-year-old movies that have now gotten a 4K restoration along with their own Steelbook release. Leading the pack is the one that actually wouldn't have been part of this pack in the first place, only because it was on a ginormous sale, and that is the original Iron Man. Because I've already got it as part of my MCU collection over there. That was part of that big-ass box of 23 MCU films that make up the Infinity Saga. But I've never been a huge fan of these steelbooks that were released in the years leading up to Endgame, because all they really did was take the original theatrical poster, put it on the front of the steelbook, put a frame around it, and call it a day. So, not a huge fan of this style of steelbook, but the only reason why I got it is because I love the original Iron Man, I love having an extra copy, and this shit was literally $5. Yeah, it was like a 24-hour sale at Best Buy, and they had so many of them that they probably figured, you know what, let's mark that shit down, get rid of some of them, and this was only $5. How can I say no to that? And then the following year, 2009, we got this gem, Zombieland, one of my favorite horror comedies with one of my favorite actors of all time, Woody Harrelson. And the steelbook, in my opinion, could have been a little better than just the logo there with the design and artwork of the world on fire right behind it. But nevertheless, 4K restoration, Blu-ray, digital, and I get a steelbook along with it. Sure, couldn't pass it up. And then we get to classics, like genuine classic films that have now been restored to 4K, some of which were actually overseen by the original director with a rather cool steelbook, or a very beautiful looking steelbook, to be much more appropriate, as it is this next entry, Schindler's List. Steven Spielberg's Academy Award winning masterpiece from 1993 gets a steelbook there, showing what is arguably one of the more striking images of the film. You see all of these survivors there in the back, but of course in the foreground, the little girl with the red sweater. So here you have the entirety of the original film in 4K restored, Blu-ray, digital copy, and then of course a plethora of special features documenting the making of the film, along with everything that you pretty much really need if you were not only, I don't want to say a fan, but you know, you consider this movie up in the echelon of one of the greatest films of all time. I personally do. Say what you want, and I knew I had to add this to my steelbook. And keeping in line with the theme of Spielberg, let's go back to what put him on the goddamn map. And of course, you're talking about the almighty Jaws, which happens to be celebrating the 45th anniversary this year, and along with it, they decided to commemorate it with a 4K release, not only on its own with this digital kind of book that comes with a booklet of like behind the scenes stuff, but of course Best Buy released a steelbook with the artwork of the film there, and on the back you have the girl swimming. Very cool, playful with the colors, and of course one of my favorite films of all time in 4K and Blu-ray right there. One of my favorite movies of my childhood that got a banging steelbook that has been on the market for a while. This ain't exactly a new release, but when I saw it go for a sale, I was like, you know what, let's finally pull the trigger on it. Jumanji with the late but ever great Robin Williams there. One of my favorite movies that when it's on TV, I gotta watch it. I just have to watch it. It was part of my childhood and therefore cemented in my brain. And I just adore this steelbook because the cover is, of course, a mock-up of the board game itself there. Oh, is it upside down? My bad. But you see it right there, a mock-up of the original cover, or the top part of the board game itself. How could you go wrong with a steelbook like that? You gotta add it if you love the movie as much as I do. And then my last steelbook for this update video is yet another classic that I will go on record to say is even better than Goodfellas, but that's just me. Casino on steelbook. Personally, not a humongous fan of this art. I think it could have been handled a little bit better. I mean, I like the dice art on the back of the Steelbook, but the front is almost quite literally just a bunch of floating heads of our main trio of actors there, Robert De Niro, Joe Pesci, and Sharon Stone. But of course, this is the original 1995 epic from Martin Scorsese, and of course, his original actors ensemble from the 1970 set film that I personally enjoy a little better than Goodfellas, but they're still both great films, obviously. And this had to be added to the collection right there. And that does it for my current update of Steelbooks. Because, trust me, right over there is another stack of yet cellophane-wrapped Steelbooks that I have yet to get to. And I will cover them in a future Steelbook video. And if you guys want to check that video, do not forget to tap the subscribe button down below, turn on notifications, and hopefully I'll see you on the next Steelbook. In the meantime, let me know in the comments, what are your guys' favorite Steelbooks that you own? What's the favorite part of your collection? What got you into Steelbook collecting? And what was your favorite Steelbook that you saw in this video? Let me know in the comments, like and share. And of course, check out the links in the description to either check out my Twitch channel, my Facebook gaming channel, my Twitter, my Instagram. All the works are in the description below. And I'll see you guys on the next one. Take care and stay humble.